Hey, welcome back to Sleepbound. Tonight we're diving into a turning point at Downton Abbey. Secrets shift hands, schemes are set in motion, and a simple dinner turns into something far more revealing. It spans from a salty pudding disaster to letters that could ruin reputations. And it's all quietly simmering beneath the silver and candlelight. So if you're ready to drift off to drama, heartbreak, and just the right amount of scheming, let's begin. Chapter 6. The Dinner for Sir Anthony. Edith settled into the chair in her bedroom, her posture deliberately authoritative as she faced Daisy and O'Brien. The kitchen maid stood trembling before her, face pale with apprehension. "I couldn't say, m'lady," Daisy stammered, twisting her apron between nervous fingers. "I don't know what Miss O'Brien means. I didn't see nothing. Well, not much." The two women exchanged a telling glance, O'Brien's satisfaction evident in the slight curve of her lips. "O'Brien, I wonder if you might leave us," Edith requested, her tone politely commanding. O'Brien departed with visible reluctance, annoyed at being excluded from her own machination. As the door closed behind her, Edith turned her full attention to the frightened servant before her. "Now, it's Daisy, isn't it?" she began, her voice honeyed with false kindness. "Yes, m'lady," Daisy confirmed, staring fixedly at the floor. "I'm sure you see O'Brien acted as she did because she's concerned." Edith leaned forward slightly, studying the girl's face. "She seems to think that you are in possession of some knowledge that is uncomfortable for you." Daisy remained silent, trapped between her inability to lie directly and her fear of speaking the truth. Her silence was more revealing than any words could have been. "Because if that is the case," Edith continued, her voice softening further, "then I don't think it's fair on you." Daisy looked up, surprised by this unexpected turn in the conversation. "Why should you be burdened with Mary's secret?" Edith pressed gently. "When there's nothing in it for you but worry and grief. My dear, my heart goes out to you. It really does." The unexpected compassion broke through Daisy's defenses. Her shoulders began to shake as tears welled in her eyes. Edith seized the opportunity, rising to take the sobbing girl gently in her arms. There, she soothed, guiding Daisy toward a chair. "Come and sit down. You've been carrying too heavy a load for too long. Just tell me, and I promise you'll feel better." In that moment, Daisy's resistance crumbled completely. The story poured out of her in halting fragments, the Turkish gentleman's body being carried through the night-darkened corridors, Lady Mary's face clearly illuminated in a shaft of candlelight, the terrible secret she had borne silently for weeks. Edith listened with growing satisfaction, each word a weapon being placed willingly in her hands. By the time Daisy had finished her tearful confession, Edith's mind was already calculating how this information might best be deployed against her sister. In Mary's bedroom that evening, preparations for dinner were underway with methodical precision. Mary stood before her mirror, assessing the placement of a delicate brooch against the fabric of her evening gown. "I'm coming," she called as her mother entered without knocking. "Do you think this brooch works? I can't decide." "It's charming," Cora replied, seating herself carefully on the edge of the bed. Mary caught her mother's reflection in the glass, noting the unusual seriousness in her expression. "Oh dear, is it another scolding?" "Of course not," Cora assured her. "You're too grown up to scold these days." "Heavens," Mary responded with flippancy. "Then it's really serious." Cora ignored the attempt at deflection. I'd like you to look after Sir Anthony Strallan tonight. He's a nice, decent man. His position may not be quite like Papa's, but it would still make you a force for good in the county. Mama, not again, Mary interrupted, turning to face her mother directly. How many times am I to be ordered to marry the man sitting next to me at dinner? As many times as it takes, Cora replied, her voice firmer than usual. Mary's eyes flashed with defiance. I turned down Matthew Crawley. Is it likely I'd marry Strallan when I wouldn't marry him? The implicit comparison between the two men, and the slight elevation of Matthew in her assessment, was not lost on Cora. I am glad you've come to think more highly of Cousin Matthew, she observed. That's not the point, Mary countered quickly. No, Cora agreed, her expression grave. The point is, when you refused Matthew, you were the daughter of an earl with an unsullied reputation. Now you are damaged goods. The blunt assessment struck Mary like a physical blow, momentarily robbing her of her customary poise. Mama. Somehow, I don't know how, Cora continued relentlessly, there is a rumor in London that you are not virtuous. Color drained from Mary's face. What? Does Papa know about this? He knows it, and he dismisses it, Cora informed her, because, unlike you and me, he doesn't know that it is true. Mary stood silent for a moment, absorbing the implications of her mother's words. When she spoke again, her voice was deliberately cold and controlled. Let's hope it's unkind gossip, because if anyone heard about Kamal, Mary stated flatly, dropping the pretense, my lover, Kamal Pamuk. Her words were a challenge, but Cora seemed merely relieved not to have to speak the name herself. Exactly, she said. If it gets around and you're not already married, every door in London will be slammed in your face. Mama, the world is changing, Mary began. Not that much, Cora interrupted sharply. And not fast enough for you. I know you mean to help, Mary said, her voice softening slightly. I know you love me, but I also know what I'm capable of, and 40 years of boredom and duty just isn't possible for me. I'm sorry. Cora's expression gentled. I do love you, and I want to help. I'm a lost cause, Mama, Mary insisted, turning back to the mirror. Leave me to manage my own affairs. Why not concentrate on Edith? She needs all the help she can get. You mustn't be unkind to Edith, Cora admonished. She has fewer advantages than you. Fewer? Mary's eyebrows rose. She has none at all. What neither woman realized was that Edith's reflection was visible in the glass of a picture on the wall. The door stood slightly ajar, and beyond it, Edith stood frozen, absorbing every damning word of their exchange. Her face hardened with vindictive satisfaction as the final pieces of information fell into place, confirming what she had learned from Daisy. The dining room glowed with soft light from the candelabra, silver and crystal gleaming against the pristine white tablecloth. William cleared the plates from the main course one by one, moving around the table with efficiency. Mary sat between Matthew and Sir Anthony, while Cora was positioned on Sir Anthony's left, with Edith directly opposite. There's no doubt about it, Sir Anthony was saying, his enthusiasm evident as he addressed his remarks to Mary. The next few years in farming are going to be about mechanization. That's the test, and we're going to have to meet it. Mary's thoughts were far away, her expression distant as she failed to respond to his observation. "Don't you agree, Lady Mary?" Sir Anthony prompted, drawing her attention back to the present. "Yes, of course, Sir Anthony," she replied automatically. "I'm sure I do." She leaned toward Matthew, who was engaged in conversation with the guest on his other side. "Are we ever going to be allowed to turn?" she whispered, her impatience evident. Across the table, Edith seized the opportunity created by her sister's disinterest. "Sir Anthony, it must be so hard to meet the challenge of the future and yet be fair to your employees." Her comment effectively interrupted the conversation to Matthew's left, drawing Sir Anthony's attention away from Mary. "This is the point, precisely," he replied with visible pleasure at her insight. "We can't fight progress, but we must find ways to soften the blow. I should love to see one of the new harvesters, if you would ever let me," Edith continued, her interest appearing genuine. "We don't have one here." "I should be delighted," Sir Anthony assured her, clearly charmed by her attention. Throughout this exchange, Carson silently refilled their glasses while William supplied pudding plates before discreetly withdrawing. Mary, observing the interaction between her sister and Sir Anthony, felt a mixture of relief at being freed from tedious conversation and irritation at Edith's obvious maneuvering. As the dessert course progressed, Mary found herself drawn into conversation with Matthew, their initial awkwardness giving way to a more comfortable exchange. "Mama has released me, thank God," she remarked, helping herself to the meringue that had been placed before her. "Sir Anthony seems nice enough," Matthew observed diplomatically. "If you want to talk farming and foxes by the hour," Mary replied with a slight roll of her eyes. Matthew nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He seemed genuinely pleased by their improved relations. "I'm rather looking forward to the flower show tomorrow, where Mr. Molesley's roses will turn everybody's heads," Mary predicted, then added with conspiratorial warmth, "But if you tell Granny I said so, I'll denounce you as a liar." "I wouldn't dare," Matthew assured her. "I'll leave that to my fearless mother." Her laugh in response was genuine, the sound surprising them both with its warmth. The charged atmosphere between them shifted subtly, an undercurrent of attraction flowing beneath their verbal sparring. "How are the cottages?" Mary inquired, her interest appearing sincere. "They're coming along wonderfully," Matthew replied, his enthusiasm evident. "I'd love to show you." Their conversation was abruptly interrupted by a commotion from the other end of the table. Sir Anthony Strallan had taken a bite of his dessert and reacted with explosive dismay. "Good God!" he exclaimed, his shout silencing all conversation. "Ugh!" He lifted his napkin and spat his mouthful into it, his face contorted with disgust. "What on earth?" Robert demanded, half rising from his chair. Sir Anthony struggled to compose himself. "I do apologize, Lady Grantham, but I had a mouthful of salt." "What?" Cora's expression shifted from confusion to horror as she cautiously tasted her own dessert. "Everyone, put down your forks," she commanded, mortification evident in every syllable. "Carson, remove this and bring some fruit, bring cheese, bring anything to take this taste away. Sir Anthony, I am so sorry." Around the table, reactions varied from concern to barely concealed amusement. Robert shook his head sympathetically. "Pains I be Mrs. Patmore's kitchen maid when the news gets out." "Poor girl," Sybil added with genuine compassion. "We ought to send in a rescue party." Edith, still focused on her primary objective, leaned toward Sir Anthony with solicitous concern. "You must think us very disorganized." "Not at all," he assured her gallantly. "These things happen." The most unexpected response came from Mary and Matthew. Amidst the chaos, their eyes met across the table, and something in the absurdity of the moment overcame them both. They dissolved into helpless laughter, Mary clutching Matthew's arm as she struggled to regain her composure, stifling her mirth with her napkin. The spontaneous moment of shared humor created a bond between them more powerful than weeks of formal conversation might have achieved. In that instant of unguarded delight, barriers fell away, revealing a connection neither had fully anticipated. Chapter 7. The Cook's Secret. In stark contrast to the refined amusement in the dining room, the servants' hall below stairs had become a theater of despair. Mrs. Patmore sat slumped at the table, sobbing uncontrollably into a handkerchief, while the other servants watched in uncomfortable silence. Thomas and William were absent, likely still attending to the disastrous dinner service upstairs. "Come on," Anna urged gently. "It's not that bad. Nobody's died." "I don't understand it," Mrs. Patmore wailed, her face flushed with distress. "It must have been that Daisy. She's muddled everything up before now." "But I never—" Daisy began to protest, only to be silenced by a subtle gesture from Carson, who had entered the room with the quiet authority that characterized his presence. "Don't worry, Daisy," Carson interjected. "You're not in the line of fire here." Mrs. Patmore continued her lament, seemingly oblivious to the defense of her assistant. "I know that pudding. I chose it 'cause I know it." Mrs. Hughes, standing at the edge of the gathering, fixed the cook with a knowing look. "Which is why you wouldn't let her ladyship have the pudding she wanted, because you didn't know it." "Exactly," Mrs. Patmore confirmed, before realizing she had inadvertently revealed a telling admission. Her sobs subsided momentarily as she recognized her tactical error. "I don't see how it happened," she added weakly, dissolving into tears once more. Carson caught Bates's eye across the room and inclined his head slightly toward the door. Bates nodded in understanding and rose to his feet. "Come on, everyone," Bates announced, with quiet authority. "Let's give Mrs. Patmore some space to breathe." He began ushering the staff toward the door, pausing as he reached Anna, who remained seated. "You too," he urged. "I don't think I should leave her," Anna protested, concern evident in her expression. "Yes, you should," Bates insisted gently. "Leave her to Mr. Carson. He knows what he's doing." They departed, leaving the cook and butler alone. Carson moved to the fireplace, kneeling to add coal to the dying embers, despite his stiff joints. "Don't do that," Mrs. Patmore objected, momentarily distracted from her misery. "Get William or the hall boy to do it. It's beneath your dignity." "It won't kill me," Carson replied mildly, settling into the chair opposite her. "Now." He reached across the table to take her hand in his, patting it with paternal reassurance. "All in your own good time. I think you've got something to tell me." Mrs. Patmore looked at him, the fight draining from her demeanor. The weight of her secret had become too heavy to bear alone, and in Carson's steady presence, she found the courage to confront it at last. In the kitchen passage, the other servants lingered, reluctant to disperse entirely. Anna made a subtle signal to Bates, and they stepped away from the group. know where that snuff box is," she whispered, drawing closer to him. "Where?" he asked, brow furrowing. "Hidden in your room." For a moment, Bates stood stunned, disappointment etching itself across his features. "You don't think—" "Course I don't, you silly beggar," Anna interrupted, a fond exasperation coloring her tone. "Then," Bates prompted, "I bet Thomas'd like it if they took you for a thief." Understanding dawned in Bates's eyes as the pieces fell into place. "Yes, I expect he would." "Go upstairs now and find it," Anna urged, "and when you have, you can choose whether to put it in Thomas's room or give it to me, and I'll slip it into Miss O'Brien's." "You naughty girl," Bates admonished, though his eyes crinkled with suppressed amusement. "Fight fire with fire," Anna replied with a shrug. "That's what my mum says." The simplicity of her wisdom drew a smile from him, even as the gravity of his situation lingered. In Anna's practical loyalty, Bates found not just an ally, but something deeper, something that made his heart lighten despite the perils arrayed against him. As the ladies entered the drawing room, guided by Thomas, conversation turned inevitably to the dinner disaster. "Poor Mrs. Patmore," Sybil said with genuine sympathy. "Do you think you should go and see her?" "Tomorrow," Cora decided, settling onto a chaise longue. "She needs time to recover her nerves. I knew there was something going on." "It seems hard that poor Sir Anthony had to pay the price," Edith remarked, her concern for him evident. "Good God!" Mary exclaimed, launching into an exaggerated imitation of Sir Anthony's reaction that set Sybil laughing despite herself. Edith's lips thinned with disapproval. "As for your giggling, like a ridiculous schoolgirl with Cousin Matthew, it was pathetic." "Poor Edith," Mary countered smoothly. "I am sorry Matthew's proved a disappointment to you." "Who says he has?" Edith challenged. "Matthew," Mary replied with deliberate casualness. "He told me." "Oh, sorry. Wasn't I supposed to know?" The exchange was clearly infuriating to Edith, a fact that did not escape Cora's notice. "You were very helpful, Edith," Cora interjected, attempting to diffuse the tension. "Looking after Sir Anthony like that. You saved the day." "I enjoyed it," Edith replied, her mood brightening. "We seem to have a lot to talk about." She cast a rather superior glance at Mary, who made a face and moved closer, their voices dropping to a heated whisper. "Spare me your boasting, please," Mary hissed. "Now who's jealous?" Edith replied, triumph flashing in her eyes. "Jealous?" Mary's eyebrows rose in mock astonishment. "Do you think I couldn't have that old booby if I wanted him?" "Even you can't take every prize," Edith countered. Mary's eyes narrowed. "Is that a challenge?" "If you like," Edith confirmed, her chin lifting in defiance. The sisters regarded each other with the electric hostility that had characterized their relationship since childhood. Neither was willing to yield, each determined to assert dominance over the other in this latest battlefield of their ongoing war. Back in the servants' hall, Carson sat listening to Mrs. Patmore's confession. Her tears had subsided, leaving behind a quiet desperation more affecting than her earlier outburst. "I've known it for a while now," she admitted, her voice thick with emotion. "At first, I thought it might pass, you know, like a headache or an earache, but I know it won't." "And it's getting worse?" Carson prompted gently. Mrs. Patmore nodded, her hands twisting in her lap. Oh yes, I could almost manage for a long time, knowing the kitchen and where everything was kept, even with that fool girl. I think you might owe Daisy an apology, Carson suggested, his tone firm but kind. The suggestion was clearly difficult for Mrs. Patmore to accept. Maybe, she conceded reluctantly. I've had a lot to put up with, I can tell you. Carson chose to let this pass without comment. And you've not been to a doctor? I don't need a doctor to tell me I'm going blind, Mrs. Patmore replied, her blunt admission hanging heavily in the air between them. She looked at him, her eyes filling again with tears that she struggled to contain. A blind cook, Mr. Carson. What a joke. Whoever heard of such a thing? A blind cook. She attempted a laugh at the absurdity of her situation, but the sound emerged broken and desolate. Carson's response was not in words, but in action. He simply took her hand in both of his and squeezed it, offering silent comfort through the warm strength of his grip. In that moment of shared understanding, no words were necessary. Mrs. Patmore had finally unburdened herself of the secret that had been tormenting her, and Carson had silently promised his support in whatever way he could provide it. The unspoken bond between them, forged through years of service side by side, provided more solace than any platitudes could have offered. In the grand hall, Robert led the men from the dining room, their after-dinner conversation still in progress. I hope our salty pudding didn't spoil the evening for you, Robert remarked to Matthew with wry humor. On the contrary, Matthew replied, his expression suggesting that the evening had offered unexpected pleasures, despite the culinary mishap. I'm glad you and Mary are getting along, Robert observed, a cautious optimism in his tone. Matthew smiled but offered no direct comment on the observation. There's no reason why you can't be friends, Robert continued, probing gently. No, Matthew agreed. No reason at all. Something in his tone encouraged Robert to venture further. I don't suppose there's any chance that you could sort of start again? Life is full of surprises, Matthew replied, his non-committal answer nonetheless carrying a hint of possibility that Robert found encouraging. With a pleased laugh, Robert walked through the drawing-room doors, which Thomas had opened for them. Matthew followed more slowly, falling into step with Sir Anthony and the other male guests. As they entered the drawing-room, Mary and Edith both looked up, their competitive glances telegraphing their intentions clearly. From Matthew's perspective, he saw Mary approaching him with a warm smile that sparked a momentary hope in his chest. I've been waiting for you, she began, her voice honey-sweet. I've found a book on the table over here, and I think it's just the thing to catch your interest. Really? Matthew responded, taken aback by this unexpected attention. I was only... But she had already moved past him to join Sir Anthony Strallan, slipping her arm through his with charm as she led him toward the central table. Well, I was looking in the library and Her voice faded as they moved away, leaving Matthew stranded and bewildered by the sudden shift. Edith, observing the scene with keen interest, initially approached the table to join Sir Anthony, only to find herself effectively blocked by Mary's expert maneuvering. I was very taken by what you were saying over dinner about the way she began, only to find Sir Anthony completely absorbed in whatever Mary was sharing with him. You're so right, Lady Mary, he enthused, his attention entirely captured. How clever you are, This is exactly what we have to be aware of." As he spoke, Mary glanced triumphantly at her sister, the victory in her eyes unmistakable. Edith retreated, defeat written in the slump of her shoulders as she joined Matthew, who still stood motionless in the center of the room. "It seems we have both been thrown over for a bigger prize," she observed bitterly. Matthew did not respond immediately, but the chiming of the clock provided him with a timely excuse. "Heavens, is that the time?" he remarked, a hint of strain beneath his casual tone. "You're not going?" Edith asked, surprise evident in her voice. "The truth is, my head's splitting," Matthew explained, his discomfort palpable. "I don't want to spoil the party, so I'll slip away. Will you make my excuses to your parents?" He moved toward the door, signaling for William to assist him in his departure. Across the room, Mary looked up and saw Matthew leaving. A flicker of realization crossed her face as she comprehended the consequences of her impulsive actions. "Excuse me, Sir Anthony," she said quickly, abandoning her conquest to follow Matthew out of the room. Robert observed this sequence with knowing eyes, the dynamics between the young people unfolding exactly as he had predicted. Chapter 8. Confessions. Mary reached the main hall just as William shut the front door. The grand space seemed suddenly empty, her purpose in following Matthew evaporating like morning mist. "Has Mr. Crawley left?" she asked, though the answer was obvious. "Yes, milady," William confirmed with a slight bow. Mary glanced toward the door, confusion furrowing her brow. "But what about the car? Branson can't have brought it round so quickly." "He said he'd rather walk, milady." "It's very windy," Mary noted, the observation revealing more concern than she intended. William's expression remained professionally neutral. "He mentioned he had a headache, that the wind would blow it away." "Thank you," Mary replied, dismissing him with a nod. William gave a slight bow and returned to the drawing room, leaving Mary alone with her thoughts. She hovered for a moment, glancing out of the window at Matthew's receding figure. The truth was, she didn't know what she wanted. The game she had played with such skill had backfired, leaving her with a hollow victory and an unexpected sense of regret. In the drawing room, Robert had observed the entire sequence of events with a father's knowing eye. "Mary can be such a child," he remarked to Cora, who had joined him near the fireplace. "What do you mean, darling?" Cora inquired, her attention momentarily diverted from her hostess duties. "She thinks if you put a toy down, it'll still be sitting there when you want to play with it again," Robert explained, his tone mixing affection with exasperation. "What are you talking about?" Cora pressed, genuinely puzzled. "Never mind," Robert replied, reaching down to stroke her cheek affectionately. The gesture pleased her, a small moment of tenderness amidst the greater dramas unfolding around them. The search for the missing snuff box created its own drama below stairs. Carson had announced his intention to conduct a thorough investigation, prompting immediate discomfort in Thomas and O'Brien. "Well, I think we should have a search," Bates had suggested, with a calm assurance that unnerved his adversaries. "What?" Thomas's alarm was poorly concealed. "It doesn't do to leave these things too long," Bates continued, his expression unreadable. Anna quickly reinforced his suggestion. "Mr. Carson can search the men's rooms, and Mrs. Hughes the women's." The smiles had vanished from Thomas's and O'Brien's faces, replaced by panic-stricken glances And it should be right away, now we've talked of it, Anna added with deliberate emphasis. So no one has a chance to hide the box. Don't you agree, Mr. Carson? Carson considered the proposal. Well, perhaps it's for the best, although I'm sure I won't find anything. I'll fetch Mrs. Hughes. As he departed, Thomas and O'Brien stood in unison, their movements betraying their anxiety. I think I'll just... Thomas began. I'd better check it's tidy, O'Brien added hastily. They hurried from the room, leaving Bates and Anna sharing knowing smiles to the bewilderment of the remaining staff. Now, Mrs. Hughes emerged from Gwen's and Anna's room, the housemaid standing in the doorway as she progressed to O'Brien's quarters. Miss O'Brien, she called, pushing open the door. The scene that greeted her was one of complete chaos. O'Brien stood in the middle of a stripped bed, surrounded by scattered belongings, boxes upturned, drawers emptied, clothes strewn across every surface. My, Mrs. Hughes remarked dryly, you have been busy. At Crawley House, Matthew removed his coat with weary movements. The evening had begun with such promise and ended with such disappointment. Isabel appeared from an adjoining room, her expression curious. I was expecting you later than this, she observed. I'll tell Molesley to lock up. Thanks, Matthew replied, offering a distracted kiss to her cheek before turning toward the stairs. Good night, Mother. How was the evening? Isabel asked, unwilling to let him escape so easily. Did you enjoy yourself? Quite, Matthew answered noncommittally. He paused on the stairs, gazing down at his mother with a rueful smile. The thing is, for a moment I thought... He stopped, shaking his head slightly. Never mind what I thought. I was wrong. Good night. He vanished onto the landing, leaving Isabel to ponder the implications of his words and the subtle melancholy that shadowed them. The day of the flower show dawned bright and clear, the village hall transformed into a celebration of color and scent. Villagers and servants alike moved from stall to stall, examining the displays with appreciative murmurs. Violet, Cora, Robert, and the girls walked among the exhibits, their presence lending an air of occasion to the proceedings. Isabel and Matthew accompanied them, the previous evening's awkwardness lingering in subtle tensions. Mary glanced at Matthew several times, but while he acknowledged her with a polite nod, he offered no conversation. How pretty, Sybil remarked, pausing at a display of handcrafted pottery. What's it for? It's for salt, milady, the stallholder explained. The wide mouth stops it getting damp. Why should it get damp? Sybil inquired, genuinely curious. Because a great many cottages are damp, milady, came the response, delivered without accusation, but carrying an unavoidable reminder of the disparities between their worlds. Yes, of course, Sybil acknowledged, embarrassment tinging her cheeks. How silly of me. The party continued to Bill Molesley's stall, where his roses drew immediate admiration from all who viewed them. My word, Molesley, Robert exclaimed with genuine enthusiasm. Splendid roses as usual. Well done. Thank you, your lordship, Bill Molesley replied, his weathered face brightening at the praise. All the stalls are set out very well this year, Violet observed, her comment clearly intended to dilute the specific praise for Molesley's display. Robert and Cora, however, were genuinely impressed by the gardener's offerings. This is enchanting, Cora remarked, bending to examine a particularly beautiful bloom. "Do we grow it?" "I doubt you've got that one, your ladyship," Bill Molesley responded with quiet pride. "I've only just found it myself." "Is it a secret, or could you tell Mr. Brockett?" Cora inquired, referring to their own gardener. "I'd be glad to, milady," Molesley assured her with unassuming generosity. His son, Isabel's butler, beamed with undisguised pride as they moved on to the next display. "He should come and see the rose garden," Cora suggested to Robert. "He could give us some ideas." "Old Molesley's a champion," Robert agreed. "Or he would be, in a fairer world." He gave a meaningful smile to his mother, who stiffened perceptibly. "Don't you start," Violet warned. "I'm afraid I've been annoying Cousin Violet on that score," Isabel admitted with unapologetic frankness. "If Mr. Molesley deserves the first prize for his flowers, the judges will give it to him," Violet insisted, her tone brooking no argument. "They wouldn't dare," Robert muttered, exchanging a knowing glance with Cora. "Really, Robert?" Violet admonished, genuine irritation coloring her tone. "You make me so annoyed. Isn't it possible that I should win the thing on merit?" "I think the appropriate answer to that, Mama, is yes, dear," Robert replied with affectionate irony. Violet turned away, but not before noticing Robert's conspiratorial wink to Isabel, who returned it with a smile. The interaction did nothing to improve her mood. Outside the village hall, the servants walked in small groups, enjoying their rare afternoon of relative freedom. O'Brien and Thomas strolled together, their earlier panic now replaced by cautious relief. "I don't know why we're bothering," O'Brien complained. "We'll have missed the speeches, as it is." "Don't be such a grouch," Thomas retorted, his characteristic arrogance restored. A short distance behind them, Anna walked alongside Bates, their steps naturally falling into rhythm. "You should have punished one of them at least," Anna remarked, referring to the snuff-box incident. "They know that I know, and that's worth something," Bates replied, content with the moral victory. They continued in companionable silence for a moment before Anna spoke again. "What do you think will happen to Mrs. Patmore?" "She'll muddle through with Daisy to help her," Bates answered thoughtfully. "In the long term, we'll have to wait for the doctor to give his opinion." "I hope there's something they can do," Anna said softly. "I hope so too," Bates agreed. "But if there isn't, I hope they tell her there isn't. Nothing is harder to live with than false hope." His words, laden with personal meaning, gave Anna the courage to address what had been in her heart for so long. "I wish you'd come out with it," she said suddenly. "With what?" Bates asked, though his tone suggested he already knew. "Whatever it is that you're keeping secret." "I can't," he replied, the simplicity of his answer conveying volumes. "You don't deny it, then?" Anna pressed, stopping to face him directly. "No, I don't deny it," Bates admitted. "And I don't deny you've a right to ask, but I can't. I'm not a free man." "Are you trying to tell me that you're married?" Anna asked, her voice steady despite the cost. "I have been married, yes," Bates acknowledged, "but that isn't all of it." She held his gaze, knowing this might be her only opportunity to speak her truth. Because I love you, Mr. Bates. I know it's not ladylike to say it, but I'm not a lady, and I don't pretend to be." He stared at her, this good, honest woman who offered her heart so freely, and the weight of what he could not give her was evident in his pained expression. "You are a lady to me," he said softly, "and I never knew a finer one." The rattle of wheels interrupted the moment. A farmer drew up in a cart full of hay, offering transportation to one of the group. "If you want a lift, I can take one of you, but no more," he called. "One of the women," Bates suggested immediately. "No, you must go," Anna insisted. "Then we can all hurry and meet you there." He looked at her, speaking his next words for her ears only. "Yes, you're right. I mustn't slow you down. There's been too much of that already." Before she could protest, he had climbed onto the seat beside the farmer, and the cart moved off. Thomas, observing the exchange, offered a snide remark as they continued walking. "I might get myself a gammy leg. It seems to be the answer to every problem." Anna remained silent, her heart too full of unresolved emotions to respond to his cruel baiting. The confession she had harbored for so long had finally been spoken, but its reception had left her in a limbo of uncertainty, neither rejected nor fully accepted, but suspended in the space between hope and resignation. Chapter 9. The Grantham Cup. The flower show was in full swing, the village hall a tapestry of color and fragrance. Cora made her way through the crowd to find Violet, who stood with regal composure near the judge's table. "It's time for the prize-giving, Mama," Cora announced, holding out a folded paper. "Here's the list." "Perhaps you should do it," Violet suggested, though they both knew it was merely a formality. "You say that every year," Cora remarked with a patient smile. "Perhaps one year you'll take me up on it." "Perhaps I will." With a sidelong glance at her daughter-in-law, Violet unfolded the paper. Her eyes ran down the list of winners, lingering on the final entry, the Grantham Cup for Best Bloom in the Village. There, predictably, she found her own name. The expected outcome provided little satisfaction, but she kept her expression carefully neutral as she moved to the front of the hall to begin the ceremony. As Violet read out the names of winners and distributed prizes, Sybil noticed Gwen standing among the other servants. The housemaid's demeanor was downcast, a stark contrast to her earlier excitement. Seizing a moment when attention was focused elsewhere, Sybil made her way to Gwen's side. "Have you recovered from our ordeal?" she whispered, keeping her voice low to avoid drawing notice. Gwen attempted a smile, but it failed to reach her eyes. "I got a letter this morning," she confided. "They must have written it as soon as I left the office. They are pleased to have met me, but I do not quite fit their requirements, so it was all for nothing." Sybil reached for the maid's hand and gave it a reassuring squeeze. "I don't agree." "You've been kind, milady, and I appreciate it," Gwen acknowledged, her voice tinged with defeat. "But only a fool doesn't know when they've been beaten." "Then I'm a fool," Sybil declared with quiet fervor, "for I'm a long way from being beaten yet." Her determination was absolute, brooking no argument. The conviction in her words kindled a small flicker of hope in Gwen's eyes, a fragile flame that might yet grow stronger with proper nurturing. Across the hall, Mary approached Matthew with deliberate casualness. The previous night's awkwardness hung between them, an invisible barrier she was determined to breach. "When you ran off last night, I hope you hadn't thought me rude," she began, her tone carefully calibrated between apology and nonchalance. "Certainly not," Matthew replied with polite distance. "I monopolized you at dinner. I'd no right to any more of your time. But you see, Edith and I had this sort of bet, Mary explained, attempting to justify her behavior. Please don't apologize, Matthew cut in, his manner courteous but firm. I had a lovely evening, and I'm glad we're on speaking terms. Now I should look after my mother. He moved away through the crowd, leaving Mary standing alone with the uncomfortable realization that her thoughtless game might have cost her something of genuine value. Edith approached, malicious satisfaction evident in her expression. Why was Cousin Matthew in such a hurry to get away? She inquired with feigned innocence. Don't be stupid, Mary snapped, her composure cracking momentarily. I suppose you didn't want him when he wanted you, and now it's the other way round, Edith observed, relishing her sister's discomfort. You have to admit, it's quite funny. Mary's eyes narrowed. I'll admit that if I ever wanted to attract a man, I'd steer clear of those clothes and that hat. You think yourself so superior, don't you? Edith challenged, her voice low but venomous. Why not? Mary countered with a dismissive shrug. I am. She turned away to join her parents near the stage, leaving Edith seething. As Mary departed, Edith became aware of O'Brien watching her intently from across the room. She acknowledged the lady's maid with a slight nod, whispering to herself, Well, I think she who laughs last laughs longest. Her hand unconsciously touched her pocket, where the letter she had written to the Turkish ambassador rested like a loaded weapon, waiting to be deployed. As Mary rejoined her parents, Cora turned to her husband with a questioning look. Did that missing box of yours ever turn up? It was a fuss about nothing, Robert admitted, somewhat sheepishly. They must have put it back on the wrong shelf when they were dusting. Bates found it this morning. Next time, have a proper look before you start complaining, Cora admonished lightly. I'm sure the servants were frightened half to death. Mea culpa, Robert conceded with good grace. The attention of the room shifted to the stage, where Violet had reached the final, most anticipated award of the day. And now, the Grantham Cup for the best bloom in the village, she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the hushed space. All eyes were upon her, but none more penetrating than Isabel's, who stood directly before the stage, her gaze unwavering and challenging. Violet glanced to one side and saw Bill Molesley with his son. The younger Molesley appeared stern, resolved not to expect justice, but the old gardener's face held a fragile hope that tugged unexpectedly at Violet's conscience. The Grantham Cup is awarded to, she began, pausing to take a deep, steadying breath. Something shifted in her expression, a subtle softening around the eyes that few would notice, but those who knew her well. To Mr. William Molesley for his Countess Cabarrus Rose, she concluded, her voice clear and decisive. Complete silence fell over the hall. The villagers were too stunned to applaud, and Bill Molesley stood frozen, as if unable to comprehend what he had just heard. Bravo! Well done! Bravo! Isabel broke the silence, her enthusiastic clapping initiating a cascade of response. The room erupted in cheers and applause, the sound swelling as Bill Molesley was urged toward the stage by well-wishers. Tears streamed down his weathered cheeks as he reached for the cup, his hands trembling with emotion. Congratulations, Mr. Molesley, Violet said with quiet dignity. Thank you, milady, he replied, his voice thick with gratitude. Thank you for letting me have it. It is the judge's decision, not mine, Violet corrected him gently. But very well done. He departed the stage to be surrounded by friends and admirers, his moment of triumph complete. Violet rejoined her family, who regarded her with varying degrees of surprise and admiration. "Bravo, Mamma," Robert said warmly. "That must have been a real sacrifice." "And bravely borne," Cora added, her expression soft with approval. "I don't know what everyone is going on about," Violet insisted, her characteristic hauteur returning. "It's the judges who decide these things, not me." Cora looked puzzled. "But All is well, my dear," Violet interrupted firmly. "All is well." She crumpled the winner's list and secreted it in her reticule, preserving the fiction that the judges had made the decision independently. The celebrations continued around them, the atmosphere one of collective joy, in which even Violet, despite her protestations, seemed to take quiet satisfaction. The stillness of night had settled over Downton Abbey, the great house slumbering under a canopy of stars. In Edith's bedroom, a single lamp burned as she sat at her writing desk, an envelope before her. She had just completed addressing it. His Excellency the Turkish Ambassador, 43 Belgrave Square, London, SW. Her hand hovered over the envelope for a moment, a fleeting hesitation quickly overcome by the memory of countless slights and humiliations. With deliberate movements, she licked the envelope, pressed the flap securely closed, and placed it on her blotter. Tomorrow, her letter would begin its journey to London, carrying with it the power to shatter Mary's carefully constructed facade of propriety. The knowledge brought a cold satisfaction that Edith savored as she extinguished her lamp and prepared for bed. Outside her window, the moonlight cast long shadows across the manicured lawns, indifferent to the human dramas playing out within the stately walls. The great house stood as it had for centuries, a silent witness to the loves and betrayals, the triumphs and disappointments of those who called it home. In the servants' quarters below stairs, Anna lay awake, replaying her conversation with Bates in her mind, analyzing every word and gesture for hidden meaning. In the room she shared with Gwen, the rhythmic breathing of her sleeping companion provided a counterpoint to her restless thoughts. Elsewhere in the house, Mary stood at her bedroom window, gazing out at the same moon that illuminated the grounds. Her reflection in the glass was pensive, her mind troubled by the day's events and by a growing awareness that the game she had been playing, with Matthew, with her reputation, with her future, carried higher stakes than she had acknowledged. As the grandfather clock in the great hall struck midnight, these varied threads of emotion, ambition, and desire continued to weave themselves into the complex tapestry of life at Downton Abbey. The tensions that simmered beneath the surface of politeness and protocol would eventually find resolution, for better or worse. But for tonight, the house held its secrets close, waiting for the dawn of a new day and whatever it might bring. Chapter 10. Edith's Revenge. The following morning dawned with a crispness that hinted at autumn's approach. Edith rose early, the letter to the Turkish ambassador secure in her pocket, as she made her way downstairs. Her steps were purposeful, her mind focused on the task before her, dispatching the missive that would set in motion her long-awaited revenge against Mary. The great hall was quiet, the household not yet fully awakened. A footman acknowledged her with a respectful nod as she passed, giving no indication that he found her early appearance unusual. Outside, the air held a pleasant chill, the gardens still heavy with dew that sparkled in the morning light. Edith walked briskly toward the village, the sealed envelope a constant reminder of her purpose. At the village post office, she hesitated briefly before slipping the letter into the postbox. The soft thud as it fell inside seemed disproportionately loud in the quiet building. There could be no turning back now. Her words would soon be in the hands of the Turkish ambassador, revealing Mary's scandalous secret to the wider world. "Good morning, Lady Edith," the postmistress called cheerfully. "You're about early today." "Yes," Edith replied with a composed smile. "I wanted to catch the first collection." "Well, you've done that right enough," the woman assured her. "That'll be on its way to London before noon." Edith nodded her thanks and departed, a complex mixture of emotions swirling within her. The satisfaction she had anticipated was present, but it was tempered by an unexpected undercurrent of unease. She pushed the feeling aside, focusing instead on the justice of her actions. Mary had always taken everything: attention, admiration, love, leaving Edith with nothing but the bitter dregs of family life. Now, finally, the scales would be balanced. As she walked back to Downton, Edith's thoughts turned to Sir Anthony Strachan. Despite Mary's cruel interference at dinner, she felt confident that she could re-establish the connection they had begun to forge. Mary's inevitable social downfall would only enhance Edith's prospects by comparison. For once, she would be the desirable sister, the safe choice, the one whose reputation remained untarnished. By the time she re-entered the house, breakfast was underway in the dining room. Mary sat at the table, elegantly attired as always, sipping tea with an air of entitled serenity that only strengthened Edith's resolve. If Mary noticed her sister's absence and subsequent arrival, she gave no sign, continuing her conversation with Sybil without pause. "There you are, Edith," Cora remarked. "Did you sleep well?" "Very well. Thank you, Mama," Edith replied, taking her seat. "I went for an early walk. The morning was too beautiful to waste." "How industrious," Mary commented with the faintest hint of mockery. "While some of us merely appreciate beauty, others must always be conquering it." The barb was typical Mary, subtle enough to pass as wit, sharp enough to draw blood. Edith merely smiled in response, secure in the knowledge that Mary's reign of casual cruelty would soon be coming to an end. "I thought I might call on Sir Anthony later this week," she announced, helping herself to toast. "He mentioned some agricultural journals he thought might interest me." "Did he?" Robert said absently, his attention primarily on his newspaper. "That was kind of him." "Very kind," Edith agreed, deliberately avoiding Mary's gaze. "He's an intelligent man with progressive ideas. I find him fascinating." "Then you must be easily fascinated," Mary remarked, setting down her teacup. "I found him rather like a mechanical lecturer. Wind him up, and he speaks at length on topics of interest to no one but himself." "Mary," Cora admonished gently, "I merely observe that different people have different tastes." Mary replied with deceptive innocence. "Edith clearly appreciates qualities in Sir Anthony that escaped my notice. I wish them both well." The double-edged compliment was delivered with such grace that only Edith recognized it for the insult it was. She maintained her composure, refusing to give Mary the satisfaction of a reaction. Soon enough, her sister would have far more pressing concerns than trading barbs across the breakfast table. In the servants' hall, word of Mrs. Patmore's condition had spread quickly. The cook herself had retreated to her room after breakfast preparations. the strain of maintaining her facade proving too exhausting to sustain through an entire day. "Poor woman," Anna remarked quietly to Bates as they sat side by side, attending to their morning tasks. "I can't imagine how frightening it must be." "Yes," Bates agreed, his nimble fingers continuing their work on a pair of his lordship's gloves. "To lose your livelihood and your independence in one blow, it's a hard thing." Their conversation halted as Thomas entered, casting a cold glance in their direction before taking a seat at the opposite end of the table. The footman had been unusually subdued since the snuff-box incident, his customary swagger diminished by the knowledge that Bates had outmaneuvered him. Carson appeared in the doorway, his expression grave. "Anna, could you spare a moment?" She set aside her mending and followed him to his pantry, where he closed the door before speaking. "Her ladyship has asked if we might arrange for Mrs. Patmore to see an eye specialist in London," he explained. "She's suggested that you might accompany her, as Mrs. Hughes cannot be spared." "Of course, Mr. Carson," Anna agreed immediately. "When would we go?" "Next week, most likely. Dr. Clarkson is arranging the appointment." Carson hesitated, then added with uncharacteristic emotion, "It would be a kindness if you could make the journey as easy as possible for her. She's frightened, though she'd never admit it." "I understand," Anna assured him. "I'll do everything I can." "Thank you," Carson replied, his formal facade briefly softening. "Mrs. Patmore has been with this house for many years. She deserves our support in this difficult time." Anna returned to the servants' hall, where Bates looked up expectantly. She gave him a small nod, indicating they would speak later. Their ability to communicate without words had developed naturally over time, a silent language of shared understanding that set them apart from the others. That evening, as the ladies withdrew after dinner, leaving the men to their port and cigars, Mary found herself increasingly troubled by a sense of impending change. The comfortable certainties of her world seemed suddenly precarious, though she could not identify the specific source of her unease. "You're very quiet tonight," Sybil observed as they settled in the drawing room. "Am I?" Mary replied, making an effort to appear more animated. "I suppose I'm a little tired. The flower show was rather exhausting, especially when one exerts oneself to be particularly charming to Sir Anthony Strallan." Edith interjected sweetly. "Such efforts must be tremendously draining." Mary might have responded with her usual cutting wit, but something, perhaps fatigue, perhaps a growing weariness with their eternal rivalry, made her simply shrug. "You're welcome to Sir Anthony, Edith. In fact, I encourage you to pursue him with all possible vigor." "How generous," Edith remarked, surprise evident in her tone. "Though one wonders why you bothered to charm him in the first place, if your interest was so fleeting." "A momentary folly," Mary admitted, her candor unexpected. "I sometimes forget that other people have feelings that deserve consideration." The uncharacteristic self-criticism silenced Edith more effectively than any barbed retort might have done. Before she could formulate a response, the men joined them, bringing an end to the sisters' private exchange. Later that night, as Mary prepared for bed, she found herself revisiting her brief conversation with Matthew at the flower show. His polite but distant manner had affected her more deeply than she cared to acknowledge. The realization that she might have genuinely hurt him troubled her in a way that few things did. "Will there be anything else, milady?" Anna asked as she finished brushing Mary's hair. No, thank you, Anna, Mary replied, then added on impulse, do you think people can change? Truly change, I mean. Anna considered the question with her customary thoughtfulness. I believe we can, milady, though it's rarely easy. No, Mary agreed softly. I don't suppose it would be. Left alone, Mary moved to the window, gazing out at the moonlit grounds of Downton. The vast estate, which had always represented permanence and continuity, now seemed to echo her internal uncertainties. Change was coming, to Downton, to society, to herself, ready or not. The comfortable certainties of her pre-war existence were beginning to shift beneath her feet, and she would need to adapt or risk being left behind. In her own room, Edith sat at her writing desk, penning a quick note to Sir Anthony, suggesting a time when she might call to borrow the agricultural journals they had discussed. As she sealed the envelope, her thoughts turned again to the letter now making its way to London. A small part of her wondered if she had gone too far, if the satisfaction of revenge would be worth the family scandal that would inevitably follow. She dismissed the doubt firmly. Mary had never shown her mercy. Why should she extend what had never been offered? The die was cast, the letter sent. Whatever came next, Edith had made her choice. Now she would live with the consequences, for better or worse. Throughout the great house, similar moments of reflection and decision played out in dozens of lives, from the grand bedrooms of the family to the sparse quarters of the servants. Each person caught in the web of Downton's complex social ecosystem faced their own private challenges, their own hopes and fears for the future. As the clock in the great hall chimed midnight, the house settled into silence, but the currents of change continued to flow beneath its seemingly tranquil surface. The Turkish diplomat's death had set in motion events that would ripple outward with consequences none could fully predict. Mary's indiscretion, Edith's revenge, Bates's secret, Mrs. Patmore's affliction, all these threads would continue to weave through the fabric of life at Downton Abbey, creating a pattern as yet unreadable to those caught within it. As dawn approached once more, the letter to the Turkish ambassador continued its journey to London, carrying with it the power to alter lives and reshape futures. In the coming days and weeks, the residents of Downton Abbey, both upstairs and down, would discover just how profoundly a single action could change the course of many lives. Thanks so much for joining me tonight. I hope this story has brought you a little peace and relaxation. As always, feel free to drift off whenever you're ready.
Did I make the most of loving you? So many things we didn't do. Did I give you all my heart could give? To unlived lives with lives to live. When these endless lonely days are through, I'll make the most of loving you. I'll make the most of loving you. Did we make the most of all we had? Not seeing you makes my heart sad. Did we make the most of summer days? We still have time to change our ways. When these endless lonely days are through, I'll make the most of loving you. 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 Did those tender words stay in my head? So many things were left unsaid. Did I give you all my heart could give? To unlived lives with lives to live. When these endless lonely days are through, I'll make the most of loving you. I'll make the most of loving you.